I appreciate you guys being here. What's going on? It's Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much for joining me today on this beautiful Tuesday. We got a lot to talk about. We want to talk about a couple items today as we turn the page to Kentucky week. Here are the topics on the show today. We got Alabama basketball and the fact that Nate Oates has this team rolling once again. I was kind of surprised to see that the fact that Alabama was ranked number 24 or whatever to start the season because even with the departures that this team had, I mean, Alabama is certainly a team that you don't want to deal with. And I think Nate Oates and everything that he comes with, he's just such a great basketball coach. And when you look to the victory last night against Morehead State, the team started out really hot, and Grant Nelson, who was a transfer from North Dakota State, he is the guy. Finished 7 of 12 on the night, finished with 24 points, and this team has scores. They scored 105 points in the opener, and it was a really complete performance. I think Nate Oates, clearly has done such a remarkable job at Alabama, and now with kind of the world that we're in with the transfer portal and whatnot, reloading each and every year has been great. He talked about the fact that Brandon Miller was back in attendance last night, came from Charlotte to watch the Alabama Crimson Tide roll. So if you watch the basketball game, want to get your assessment of this team, Mark Sears has 13 points. Aaron Estrada, who's a scoring machine, had 16 points, and Stevenson had 12 for this team. I think overall, when you look to this team, at one point, I think they were like 6 of 8 from beyond the three-point range, and they finish out 10 of 23 on the night. So Alabama basketball certainly off to a good start. I appreciate you guys joining me inside the comment box. What's up, Jonathan? Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. To become a member of this YouTube channel, hit the join button if you're on your computer. It's up by the subscribe button on the homepage. And if you're on your mobile, just go up. There's a hyperlink that says a bunch of different words, but that's basically how you become a fan funder. Really appreciate you guys joining me today. Grant Nelson, absolute baller. Jaden Roberts, this guy is a redshirt sophomore. He's a road grader. He's really helped Alabama's offensive line transition into where this Alabama offensive line is today. And he's at that right guard position, and he's doing a fantastic job. He's a road grader. So when you think of Alabama's offensive line and how they've improved, you have Jaden Roberts at the right guard position. You have Seth at center, and at the left guard position, you have Tyler Booker. What do Booker and Roberts have in common? They're each sophomores, which is really great, paired up with a sophomore quarterback in Jalen Miro. I know he's a redshirt sophomore, but still, you start to look at all those sophomore components, and we talked about that early in the week. And I saw that, David, LSU basketball last night to Colorado. I think Colorado's ranked number 24 or whatever. When you look to this next game against Kentucky, you cannot let it be a trap game. And Coach Saban's going to have these guys dialed in. I think, the kind of the rat poison and everything that you're going to start to hear about Alabama being good and people starting to talk more about Alabama. I get it. I mean, you should, because everybody in the world now is back to, looking what the Alabama Crimson Tide are doing. But when you look to the Kentucky Wildcats, we'll get to my callers in just a second. Let's kind of zoom in on what the Kentucky Wildcats have done thus far. 6-3 on the season, 3-3 in SEC play. Currently not ranked. Love their coach, Mark Stoops. I think he's done a really good job there at Kentucky. 72-62 in his 11th year. Didn't know he's been there for that long. Last game they beat Mississippi State 24-3 on the season. They opened up with the victory over Ball State 44-14. Then they in week 2 I guess they beat East Kentucky 28-17. Akron 35-3, beat Vanderbilt 45-20. So it was at this point that they had that momentum that we started to see from Kentucky till they ran into Georgia on October 7th, and they lost by a score of 51-13. Then they lost 3 in a row, lost to Missouri, who's also a really good team, 38-21, and then lost to Tennessee. We know those 3 teams are really good. That was a gauntlet for Kentucky, absolutely. Got back on track, I guess, against Mississippi State with a dub, and now take on Alabama and finish out with 2 road games, taking on South Carolina and Louisville. So that's kind of Kentucky at a glance. And I think when you go to a game like this on the road, you certainly have to, you can't let it be a trap game. It's at 11 a.m. You're coming off a really big victory. Coach Saban won the Dodd Award, which goes to the most outstanding coach who had the biggest victory. And I think when you look to, kind of ahead to the playoffs, and when you start to look at the rankings, which dropped tonight, you're going to start to see, notable wins and how those wins are going to come into play. And Alabama's win over LSU was notable. That was a really big late season win for Alabama at home. And I think a lot of proving the naysayers, remember Lank let a naysayer know. Clearly, that's something that Alabama continues to do week by week. This team has won 7 in a row. And when you look to the playoff rankings, which we're going to talk about in just a second, that is going to come into play. How many big games have you won? What does your schedule of strength look like? And how can you finish out? And how are you playing today? The injury report so far for this team, Coach Saban hit on this yesterday, was you have Deontay Lawson and you have Jalen Key. He didn't really provide a status update on each of those guys, but he did say that Ja'Cory Brooks is in a arm sling. I know a lot of people have been talking about that. So there's not too many, injuries that are going to be, too marquee for the most part. This team has been relatively healthy. And I think the biggest piece of news that Coach Saban dropped yesterday was on Devontae Smith. And he said that Devontae Smith, who hasn't played at all this season, he was slated to start at safety going into the beginning of week 1 and then had a foot injury, which I guess was pretty significant because he hasn't played at all. And Coach Saban said he's about 80% now. And I know you're out there like, what? Devontae Smith? Yes, Alabama has another Devontae Smith. They even call him Smitty, of course. He's on the defensive side of the ball, safety, and he said that he's doing some dry land running, and he's about 80%. So that's kind of where things stand with Deontay Lawson. Hang tight. I'll get to my callers in just a second. Alabama now kind of looking at the playoff rankings, and the rankings will drop tonight. This will be the second installment of the rankings. Here are how the rankings look today. So you have number 1, Ohio State, number 2, Georgia, number 3, Michigan, number 4, Florida State. Now, these were the first edition of the college football rankings. These will be updated tonight by the committee, and we went over the committee members during yesterday's show. You have number 5, Washington, number 6, Oregon, number 7, Texas, and number 8, Alabama. Of course, Oklahoma is going to continue to drop as they dropped a game, and then you have number 10, Ole Miss. So when you look to those teams, what do they have in common? They have in common the fact, and we're looking at those top teams, the thing that they have in common is they all won this past weekend, right? You have Michigan, who was able to put away Purdue, and then you have Ohio State, who put away Rutgers. They put them away in the second half, but still we've seen a second half emergence of this Alabama team again and again. Florida State beat Pittsburgh. They're now 9-0, and Georgia beat Missouri. I'm curious to see what the committee does with Georgia and Ohio State if they leapfrog the Georgia Bulldogs over Ohio State. I think that coming out with Ohio State, number 1, they looked at those 2 quality wins that Ohio State has on their schedule, Penn State and Notre Dame, and that tells us that they're valuing key wins. Okay, well, Georgia just got their first key win, quality win of the season, but so did Alabama, right? Beating LSU. Alabama now 8-1 on the season. We've zoomed in on Washington's schedule. They have a good win over Oregon, who was a top 10 team. But when you look to Oregon's schedule, and Oregon beat Cal, they don't really have a lot to talk about. I guess their win going to Salt Lake and beating the Utah Utes handedly is kind of their staple win. But I mean, overall, is that a better win than LSU? And look at this, and you start to compare the schedules of strength, right? The gauntlet that Alabama just went through. And how do you feel that Alabama's schedule stacks up against, another schedule like Oregon or Washington, Florida State? Alabama's schedule has been 100% a gauntlet. Look at the teams that they have played, and look at they've played up to this point. Texas was a team that you saw play at Kansas State, and that game went into overtime. Kansas State had an opportunity in overtime. It was 4th down to either kick a field goal or to go for it. They decided to go for it. I like the call, don't like the play call, and the end result is they took the L, losing to Texas. Texas has remaining games against TCU on the road, and then they go to Iowa State and then Texas Tech. Look, I still think Texas could lose any of those games, 100%. And then right now in the Big 12, the number 2 team is Oklahoma State, who just beat Oklahoma and looked like a really good team. Oklahoma, we got to wipe them off the board because they are now done. So let me see a couple other points that I wanted to hit on before I start taking calls. Look, Bama versus any of these top teams right now, You do not want to play Alabama. 1,000,000%. Is there an offensive coordinator out there that wants to deal with Alabama's defense? Is there an offensive coordinator out there that wants to deal with Dallas Turner? Is there a quarterback, that wants to deal with Dallas Turner? Right? Do you want to deal with Chris Boswell? Do you want to deal with Jahad Campbell? Do you want to deal with Kool-Aid, Terran Arnold? Who do you want to pick? You want to deal with Kevin Steele? In the second half adjustments that Alabama has made, there was a tweet floating out that kind of showcased Alabama's second half dominance against Ole Miss, Tennessee, and LSU. I'll have to look that up. But the second half combined against those three teams is super impressive, and those are super impressive offenses. So I'm just saying there's not an offensive coordinator that's kind of looking forward to playing this Alabama defense. On the flip side, you want to deal with Jalen Milroe? Go ahead. You want to doubt his deep ball? Go ahead. He'll run all over you. You want to doubt his intermediate passing? Whatever. You continue to criticize and kind of poke at Jalen Milroe, and what does the kid continue to do? He continues to win. And there's that stat, Paul. Thank you so much. 87-3 in second half against Ole Miss, Tennessee, and LSU. Look at that stat in the second half. Kevin Steele, Coach Saban was asked about kind of the second half of this team and kind of the defense of this team. Look, there it is right there on the board, 87-3 in the second half. Those are incredible adjustments that Coach Saban and his defensive staff make. And getting back to Jalen Milroe, those people who continue to harp on the fact that he isn't this or he isn't that, he's a winner, plain and simple. And he's the best playmaker on the field. He's probably, honestly, the best playmaker in college football. And we learned that back against Middle Tennessee when the ball went over his head and he scooped it up and he ran for a touchdown. His incredible ability to run, he has an incredible acceleration. It's unbelievable. And everything is clicking. Yes, he was inaccurate a couple times against LSU. He's been inaccurate, here and there. But for the most part, you do not want to deal with him. Imagine Kentucky right now watching that game film against LSU. You're like, really, this dude? I mean, what, is he 230 pounds? Man, that was an incredible performance by him. Took it over. The story of this team has been amazing because there's been so much depth to kind of chew on from the beginning of the season when this team didn't have a quarterback and there was a cake off when the cake was going to be baked. The wide receivers couldn't catch passes. We didn't know too much about Kevin Steele. We kind of had an idea that the defense would be pretty good, that the offensive line was going to be the biggest offensive line in the history of the world, and they came out flat. It wasn't much to take against Middle Tennessee. They lose to Texas. And honestly, I've seen it too. Kind of the amount of disinterest in Alabama certainly impacted those next couple weeks. The South Florida game, my goodness, that was terrible to go through. And going into that game against Ole Miss, there was so much anxiety. So many people felt that Alabama wasn't going to be Ole Miss. And then Alabama was this and that and this and that. And finally, you're starting to see people start to believe again. It's hard. It's been a gauntlet of a season. There's been a lot more anxiety this year, but there's been so much growth, right? And as the team grows more, the anxiety is starting to go down. Alabama has to finish out. Kentucky can't let that be a trap game. Have to play 4 quarters of play. You got Chattanooga, have to take care of them. And then you got Auburn. It doesn't matter. We've talked about that numerous times. Going to be a challenge. And then, if it works out, Alabama in the SEC championship against Georgia. I mean, that's the game that will really solidify Alabama back as a top team. We know that. People want to know if Alabama can beat Georgia, and that is Alabama's ticket back into the playoffs, 1,000,000%. If Georgia's undefeated, even if Georgia loses a game, I think that this was a cool graphic, and I'll get to my callers in just a second. I wanted to show you guys this. This is from the Action Network. I don't know if you guys have been following the Action Network. They have some really cool stuff. So the Action Network has this kind of, and it goes down and it breaks down every single team's playoff scenario. Really awesome. And has Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss is the SEC champ, with Ole Miss hopes, kind of fleeting, as they have to hope for Alabama to lose to Kentucky and to Auburn. And they play Georgia this coming weekend, right? Then you have the Pac-12 champ, Washington, Oregon. Those two teams, if they continue to win out, they're going to play each other in the Pac-12 championship. And then you have the Big 12 East, right? Penn State still plays Ohio State and Michigan. Michigan still play. Those three teams play each other, right? Ohio State and Michigan, they're each undefeated. The Big Ten West, there's nobody there. Don't even question who's there. And then the ACC, you have Florida State and Louisville. We've looked at Florida State's schedule. Everything should line up for Florida State. I'd be shocked if Florida State loses one of these games. I mean, I think Texas could, down the stretch, but Florida State, I just don't see them losing. They're playing at a high level. They're getting some wide receivers back in action that were injured. Jordan Travis is on a tear. That team's pretty good. You look at the comparison of scores. They're going to live off that, being the fact that what did they beat LSU by? Put in the comment box. Was it 45-27, something like that? To Alabama's 42-28, and really Alabama. A couple things. Alabama missed 2 field goals. You take 6 points off the board, and that third touchdown by LSU right before half. That should not have happened, right? So you kind of look at it could have been 48-21. That looks a lot different than what the score was. Whatever the case was, they played 4 quarters of football. All right, let's get the party started. I appreciate you guys kind of waiting with me through my opening monologue. And let me get to this last point before I break out. 404, I'll get you next time. I promise you. Don't hold it against my heart. Okay, so Branson is asking with the super chat, and thank you very much, Branson. I really appreciate it. Hey, Kyle, do you still think that LSU has the best offense in the country? That's a great question. I know they went up against the best defense in the country, and they put up 28 points. So possibly. And the reason I say that is because that quarterback is a handful to deal with. They didn't even use Brian Thomas, and they were effective moving the football. This team was able to go head-to-head with Alabama and put points on the board. The Malik Neighbors, that guy's a problem. They targeted him, I said yesterday, 17 times. No matter who you put on him, whatever they had, they have a really good offense, and they have good things going on at LSU 100%. As Coach Saban said, still not using Aaron Anderson. And I love that clip where Coach Saban's like, you'd be playing more if you were here. And I talked about kind of Aaron Anderson and wondering if that was Coach Saban's guy that he thought who left. And I know we kind of traded, guesses on who Coach Saban was referring to at that time. But I thought that was a key moment post-game. LSU's offense, they're ultra talented. That quarterback is great. Really good ball placement. But Alabama got to them, and I think the turning point of the game, the 2 turning points was clearly the hit from Dallas Turner on Daniels, which was clean. They reviewed it. Everybody's been talking about it. It was clearly clean. Coach Saban explained it. You can watch that on a YouTube short. But also the interception, and that was caused by the defense. It was a tipped pass from Dallas Turner, got his big paw up there, hit it up in the air, and Terran Arnold was able to come down with the interception, and that's when the crowd went absolutely crazy. I'm telling you, a turnover like that in these games completely transform the momentum and give the offense better field position to be able to put more points on the board. So those are kind of the turning points that I look at, and they both affected the quarterback, right? Quarterback throws the interception, quarterback gets taken out of the game. By that point, there's zero reason to think that LSU, even with Daniels, if he would have stayed in the game, that, they come back. It was already 42-28 at that point. Alabama had all the momentum, and clearly they were having issues stopping Alabama's offense, which is clearly improving week to week. So best offense in the country, maybe. That Malik Neighbors and Dane Daniels 1,000,000% are issues, and Alabama again goes against another elite offense. So I don't know, probably, I guess so. Hey fam, I appreciate you guys joining in. Thank you, Reese, for calling up on the back end. If I didn't get you guys in today, I'll get you guys tomorrow, Wednesday, 9 a.m. So here's the schedule for the rest of the day. I got media availability with Alabama this afternoon. Let me read you who is going to be at the podium. We got Kendrick Law, we got Jam Miller, and Justin Boigbe today, which should be great interviews. I will post those around 2 p.m. and then I'll probably cut a video or something like that from here. So there's tons of coverage coming your way right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Got an action-packed week as Alabama heads to Lexington this weekend to take on the Kentucky Wildcats. I appreciate all the support. support. If you guys could hit the thumbs up, I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Have a great day, everyone.